When I opened my front door that night, I didn't expect to see my daughter, barefoot, trembling. Her face bruised under the pale porch light. It was 1:03 a.m. The street was silent, except for the faint hum of a passing motorcycle far away, and there she was. My Zara, the same girl I once tucked into bed with lullabies and soft prayers. Now gasping for breath, clutching her ribs as if trying to hold herself together. "Mom. Please, help me," she whispered, before her knees buckled. I caught her just in time. Her body felt heavier than I remembered, not in weight, but in sorrow. I could smell faint perfume mixed with blood. Her palms were scraped, her hair tangled, her phone missing. For a long second, I just held her, rocking gently on the cold tile floor of my hallway as if she were a child again. When I finally found my voice, it came out broken. "Zara, who did this?" She didn't answer. Her eyes fluttered, half-conscious. The side of her lip was split. There was a red mark along her jaw that looked like a slap. Or worse. I called the doctor I knew, a family friend who'd once treated her as a child for a fever. Within half an hour, she was asleep in the spare room, wrapped in my old quilt, and I sat in the living room, the clock ticking loud enough to pierce the silence. I stared at her wedding photo on the wall, her, radiant in her ivory dress, beside a man who'd sworn before God and family to protect her, Rafiq. My son-in-law, the man I had trusted with my only child, and now, he had hit her. Back then, if you had asked me about Rafiq, I'd have told you he was a fine man. Educated, polite, a little proud, maybe, but in the way successful men often are. He worked in real estate. Good money, decent car, always wore the right words like a pressed shirt. My husband had passed away when Zara was 16, so when Rafiq came into her life, I thought, maybe this was God's mercy. A protector. A partner. Their courtship was quick. Zara had always been the quiet type, shy but kind. When she told me about him, her eyes sparkled in a way I hadn't seen since her father died. "Mom," she'd said, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear, "he listens. He really listens." I'd smiled then. That's all a mother ever wants, for her daughter to be loved gently. The wedding was simple. We held it in our small garden under fairy lights. Rafiq's family seemed pleasant. His mother spoke little, his father even less. I remember, though, the way his mother had looked at me when I offered her sweets, a small, tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. I'd brushed it off. Some people are just reserved, I told myself. Zara moved into their home the next day. A beautiful house near the sea, 2 stories, big windows, modern furniture. For a few months, she called me every night. "Mom, he's so sweet," she'd say, laughing softly. "He brings me breakfast in bed sometimes. Can you believe that?" I'd laugh too, and for a while, I let myself believe she was happy. It started changing slowly. First, the calls became shorter. Then they stopped altogether, except for Fridays, when I'd ask how things were. She'd pause too long before answering. "Busy," she'd say. "He's just busy." Then she began missing our family dinners. She'd say Rafiq had late meetings, or that she wasn't feeling well. But mothers, we know. We always know when something is off. One afternoon, I visited unannounced. I took the bus across town with a basket of homemade biryani, her favorite. When I knocked, Rafiq opened the door. He looked surprised and annoyed. "Oh, Ammi," he said, forcing a smile. "You should have called first. Zara's resting." He stood in the doorway, blocking my view. "Resting? Is she ill?" I asked. He hesitated. "Just a headache." I tried to step inside, but he didn't move. His hand gripped the doorframe, tight. "I'll tell her you came by," he said finally. His voice polite but cold. That was the first time I saw something dark behind his charm, like a curtain had fallen just for a moment. 2 days later, Zara called. Her tone was flat. "Mom, next time, just let me know before you come, okay?" Her words were gentle, but they carried a weight. As if she were repeating something she'd been told to say. I said nothing. But inside, a small thread of unease began to tighten, and then, that night came, the night she collapsed at my door. After the doctor left, I sat beside her bed and waited. Around dawn, she stirred, her lips moved, dry and cracked. "Mom, don't call him." I swallowed hard. "Zara, he needs to be held accountable for this." "You can't, please," she interrupted, tears spilling down her temples. "He'll kill me if you do." Her voice broke on the last word. For the first time, I saw fear, not the fear of an argument or misunderstanding, but the deep, helpless terror of someone trapped. Tell me what happened, I said softly. She took a long breath. He found out. I saw messages on his phone. A woman named Sana. She's younger. Works with him. Her throat tightened. When I asked him about her, he laughed. Said I was paranoid. But later that night, he came home drunk. He hit me. Said I ruined his peace. That I made him feel watched. I could feel my nails digging into my palms. He told me if I ever told anyone, he'd make me regret it. I ran, Amy. I didn't even take my shoes. Her words came out in gasps. And all I could do was stroke her hair and whisper prayers under my breath. No mother should ever hear her child say she's afraid to go home. That morning, when she finally slept again, I sat by the window watching the sunrise creep over the rooftops. The light turned the bruises on her face into soft shades of purple and gold. I thought of her wedding day, how proud I'd been, how safe I'd felt knowing she had someone to care for her, and now, I realized that safety had been an illusion. Something inside me hardened, for the first time since my husband's death. I felt a fire I hadn't known still existed. I wasn't going to let this man break my child again. I didn't yet know how, but I knew I would find a way. The next morning, I made tea the way my husband used to like it, strong, with crushed cardamom and a hint of ginger, not because I wanted to drink it, but because I needed to keep my hands busy. The house smelled of antiseptic and fear. Zara was still asleep in the guest room. Her breathing was shallow, every now and then catching as if her body still remembered the blows. The doctor had said the bruises would fade. But the deeper wounds, the ones inside, would take time. I walked to her room and quietly adjusted the blanket over her shoulder. She looked younger when she slept, her face soft like it used to be when she was little. 1,000 thoughts rushed through my mind, but one kept circling back. What kind of man hits his wife? I sat down on the edge of the bed, my fingers trembling. For a long time, I'd believed that silence preserved peace. That when something went wrong, you fixed it quietly. But as I looked at my daughter's face, swollen and broken, I realized silence had been the weapon used against her, and I had helped sharpen it, unknowingly, by teaching her to endure. By afternoon, Zara woke up. Her voice was hoarse, her eyes swollen from crying. Mom, she whispered, I don't know what to do. I brushed her hair from her face. You don't have to decide today. You rest. I'll take care of things. But she shook her head. He'll come looking for me. He always does. He'll say he's sorry. He always says that. And I always forgive him. Her words cut through me like glass. How many times, Zara? I asked quietly. She didn't answer at first. Then she whispered, 3 times. The first time, he threw a glass at me. Said it slipped. The second time, he pushed me. Said it was an accident. This time, she trailed off, tears filling her eyes. I held her hands, noticing how cold they were. You are not going back there, I said, steady but firm. Not this time. She looked at me, guilt flickering across her face. What will people say? Ah, that old sentence, the one that has silenced so many women before her. I exhaled slowly. People will say what they want. Let them. But they will not bury you under their words. That evening, I called my friend Nazreen. She worked in a women's welfare organization, quiet work, but powerful. She came over within the hour, wearing her usual calm expression and carrying her leather file bag. When she saw Zara, her eyes softened. She sat beside her, asked questions gently, about the marriage, the abuse, the timeline. Zara answered in fragments. Sometimes she couldn't speak, and Nazreen would just hold her hand until she was ready. Afterwards, she turned to me. You need to report this. The injuries, the threats, it's enough for a case. I hesitated. The idea of dragging this into the open made my stomach twist, but then I looked at my daughter, her bruised face, her shaking hands, and I knew there was no other way. Nazreen placed her hand on mine. He counts on her fear. Once you break that, he loses his power. I nodded. We'll do it. That night, as I sat by Zara's bedside again, I thought about Rafiq, how I'd once admired his confidence. His polished manners. I remembered a moment from before their wedding. He'd offered to fix the broken garden light. He'd climbed the ladder, quick and sure, smiling down at me. Don't worry, Amy, he'd said, I'll take care of everything. How easily we mistake control for care. I felt something shift inside me. Not just anger, something quieter, colder. Resolve. The next morning, Zara woke up to the sound of her phone buzzing. It was an unknown number. Her hands trembled as she reached for it. I took it before she could answer. I pressed speaker. Zara? The voice was low, controlled. Rafiq's. Where are you? I didn't speak. He continued, I know you're angry. I shouldn't have done that. But you can't just disappear. People are asking questions. Come home. We'll talk. Zara's lips quivered. I could see the conflict in her eyes, the old habit of forgiveness tugging at her. I took the phone and spoke for the first time. Rafiq, this is her mother. There was silence. Then a sharp intake of breath. Mom. I didn't know she was there. Listen, it was a misunderstanding. Don't you dare lie to me, I said, my voice steady. You hit my daughter. You humiliated her. And now you have the nerve to call it a misunderstanding? His tone changed, from smooth to defensive. You don't understand, Amy. She provokes me. She checks my phone, accuses me of things. I cut him off. If she has to check your phone, it means she no longer feels safe with you. And if she doesn't feel safe, she won't come back. He was silent for a long time before muttering, You'll regret interfering. Then the line went dead. Zara burst into tears. He's going to ruin everything, she cried out. I held her tightly. He already has, my love. Now it's our turn to put the pieces back where they belong. 2 days later, we filed the report. Nazreen went with us. The police officer, a middle-aged woman, listened patiently. Wrote everything down, took photos of the bruises. Zara was trembling. But she didn't look away once afterwards. I took her for tea at a small cafe near the station. She sat quietly, staring at her cup. I feel empty, she said finally. That's what freedom feels like at first, I told her. It's heavy before it becomes light. That evening, Rafiq came to my house. He didn't knock gently. He banged on the door until the sound echoed through the walls. Zara froze in the hallway. Stay inside, I whispered, before opening the door. He stood there, neat, composed, as if nothing had happened. But his eyes? There was a flicker of rage barely restrained. Mom, he said, forcing a smile. I just came to talk. No, I said. You came to intimidate. He took a step forward. You've turned her against me. She's confused. Confused? My voice rose, calm but sharp. You think bruises are confusion? You think terror is misunderstanding? His smile faltered. For a moment, he looked small, the kind of smallness that comes from being exposed. Then he whispered, You'll regret this, and walked away. I closed the door and locked it. Zara sank to the floor, sobbing, but this time, I didn't comfort her with false promises. I told her the truth. It's not over yet. But we will make it through. That night, as I sat alone in the living room, I felt the weight of what had begun, not just a battle for safety, but for her dignity. I didn't know how long it would take. I only knew this, he had broken something sacred, and I wasn't going to let him walk away untouched. The next few days passed like walking on cracked glass, every step cautious. Every sound too loud. Zara stayed in the guest room mostly, curtains drawn. She ate little, spoke less. Sometimes I'd find her sitting by the window, staring at the garden. Fingers tracing the scar on her wrist where her bangles had cut her the night she ran. I tried to distract her, cooked her favorite doll. Played the songs she used to hum while studying, but her smile never fully reached her eyes. Then, one morning, she said quietly, Mom. Do you think he really loves her? Her voice trembled. I knew she meant the woman, Sana. The mistress who had taken root in her marriage like a poisonous vine. I looked at her and said softly, Love doesn't leave bruises, my child. Whatever he feels for her. It isn't love. It's just another excuse to hurt you. She nodded, tears welling again. I keep asking myself what I did wrong. Maybe I wasn't enough. Maybe. I reached across the table and held her hand. Don't finish that sentence. You were more than enough. He was the one who was less. For the first time in days, she let herself cry without hiding. And I just held her, as the kettle whistled behind us and the morning light poured in through the window like a small promise. Later that week, Nazreen called. There's been movement, she said. The police served him notice. He'll have to appear for questioning. I felt my heart tighten. Will they protect her? I asked. Yes. But, Amy. He's going to push back. Men like him don't accept shame easily. I thanked her and hung up, already knowing she was right, because that night, it began, the phone calls, unknown numbers. Silent breaths on the line. Sometimes a faint chuckle before hanging up. Zara started jumping at every ring. By the third day, I took the phone and turned it off. He wants to scare us, I said. We won't give him that satisfaction. But I couldn't lie to myself, I was scared too. On Friday, while I was at the market, my neighbor, Mrs. Khan, stopped me. She leaned closer, her voice low. I saw him outside your gate yesterday. Just standing there, watching. My stomach dropped. I returned home immediately. The air felt heavier somehow, like the house itself was holding its breath. Zara was in her room, asleep. I quietly checked the locks on every door and window. Then I placed a chair against the main door before sitting down on the sofa, staring into the darkness until morning. The next day, Rafiq's mother came. It was early afternoon. She arrived unannounced, wrapped in an expensive shawl, her face lined with what might have been worry or performance. I opened the door just enough to see her. Mom, she said, forcing a smile. Can I come in? I hesitated, then stepped aside. She walked in, eyes scanning the house like a detective. Zara here? She's resting, I replied, her lips tightened. This whole mess? It's gotten out of hand. The police? The neighbors talking? You've embarrassed my family. I let out a bitter laugh. Your son beat my daughter. She ran for her life. And you're worried about embarrassment? She frowned, adjusting her shawl. Rafiq made mistakes, I admit. But marriage isn't a joke, sister. These things should be handled quietly. Quietly? I repeated, my voice trembling. You mean, silently? Like your son wanted. Like all abusers want. Her tone hardened. Be careful what you say. You're making an enemy out of the wrong family. That was the moment something inside me snapped, the last thread of patience. I stepped closer, looked her straight in the eyes, and said, if protecting my daughter makes me your enemy, then so be it. She glared, muttered something under her breath, and left. The echo of the closing door lingered like a slap. That evening, Zara found me sitting at the dining table, head in my hands. She came, didn't she? She asked softly. I nodded. Zara sighed. She used to call me Beatty, you know. Said I was the daughter she never had. Her voice cracked. All lies, Amy. All of it. I reached for her hand again. You still have me. And in that moment, I realized, maybe that was enough, but peace didn't last long. 2 nights later, there was a loud thud against the gate. I rushed out, heart pounding. Someone had thrown a rock wrapped in paper. The note read, withdraw the case. Or next time, it won't be a rock. I sat on the ground, the paper trembling in my hands. The quiet street suddenly felt alive with eyes I couldn't see. Zara came running. What happened? I handed her the note. She read it and went pale. Mom, she whispered. He's not going to stop. I looked at her, my child, who'd spent years shrinking herself for love that didn't deserve her, and I made a silent vow, if he wanted a fight, he would get one. But not on his terms. The next morning, I called Nazreen again. She came with an officer and we filed a harassment report. They placed a restraining order and installed a small CCTV camera outside my house. Zara seemed calmer knowing someone was watching. Though I could still see the fear living behind her eyes. At night, she'd sometimes whisper, Mom, what if he comes while we sleep? And I'd answer, then he'll see a mother who's no longer afraid. Days turned into weeks. Slowly, Zara started to heal. The bruises faded to pale yellow, the nightmares came less often. She began helping me in the kitchen again, chopping onions, laughing softly when the tears stung her eyes. One morning, while hanging laundry in the garden, she said, Mom, I want to work again. I can't keep hiding. I smiled. Then we'll make it happen. And we did. Nazreen helped her apply for a position at a local school as an assistant teacher. When she got the job, she cried, but this time, from relief. It felt like life was finally giving her small pieces of herself back. Then, just as the world seemed to be settling, Rafiq reappeared, this time in public. It was a Sunday afternoon. Zara was at the school's parent meeting, and I'd gone to buy vegetables. When I came out of the store, he was waiting by my car. Mom, he greeted, voice calm. Too calm. We need to talk. I stiffened. There's nothing left to talk about. He sighed. You've turned her against me. Do you really think she can live without me? I made her who she is. I felt heat rise in my chest. No, Adam. You tried to unmake her. And she's finally remembering who she was before you. His smile faded. You're making a mistake. Maybe, I said, stepping closer, but it's one I can live with. You, on the other hand, you'll have to live with the truth. He stared at me for a long time before walking away. But I noticed something in his face, not rage, this time, but fear that he knew he was losing control. That night, as I told Zara about the encounter, she simply nodded. I'm not scared anymore, she said quietly. He can't touch me now. And for the first time since that dreadful night, I believed her. It's strange how silence can become your comfort after chaos. The nights were calmer now. Zara had started sleeping through most of them, though sometimes I'd still hear her shift restlessly, whispering in her dreams. I'd go to her room, sit by her bed, and stroke her hair until she settled. Every morning, I made her tea before she left for school, 1 spoon of sugar, a dash of cardamom, just the way she liked it. The world outside was still noisy and cruel, but in our small kitchen, we'd built peace out of routine. She was blooming again. I could see it, in the way she held her head high when walking to the bus stop, in the way she laughed with the neighbors' children through the fence. It was like watching a wilting plant find sunlight again, but life has a cruel sense of timing. It gives you calm just long enough for you to forget the storm, then reminds you it's still waiting offshore. One Thursday evening, Zara came home later than usual. I was just about to call her when she walked in, pale and shaking. Mom, she whispered, closing the door quickly. He came to the school. My heart stopped. Who? She didn't have to say it, I already knew. Rafiq. He was waiting outside. Said he just wanted to talk. When I refused, he grabbed my wrist. She lifted her arm, faint red marks still visible. The guard came running, and he left. But he said he'll come back. I felt rage boil inside me, sharper than fear this time. He's crossing lines now, I said. We're going to the police again. Tonight. But Zara shook her head. What if this never ends, Emmy? What if he keeps finding me? What if he... She broke down, sinking into a chair. I knelt beside her. It will end. I promise you. And I meant it. The next morning, we met with Nazreen and the officer assigned to the case. They listened carefully, took notes, and promised to increase surveillance around the school. But what touched me most was something Nazreen said afterward. As we sat in her car, she murmured. There's a strength in Zara I haven't seen before. Whatever he tried to destroy in her, it didn't work. I smiled faintly. He built his power on her silence. Now she's found her voice, and that terrifies him. Weeks went by. Slowly, the noise faded again. No calls. No messages. No shadows at the gate. Zara began focusing on her work, staying late sometimes to help her students. She even talked about applying for a teaching diploma. One Sunday morning, I woke up to find her cooking breakfast. The smell of fried parathas and mint chutney filled the house. She was humming, something I hadn't heard in months. When she noticed me, she smiled shyly. It's been a while since I cooked for you, Ammy. My throat tightened. It's perfect, I whispered, and for a few hours, it really felt like things were perfect, but peace, again, was short. Lived at it was mid-October when everything changed. That evening, Zara was on the balcony watering plants when I heard a knock at the door. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. I opened it slightly, and froze. Rafiq stood there, his eyes bloodshot, his hair unkempt. There was something wild about him. Where is she? He demanded. I tightened my grip on the door. Leave before I call the police. He sneered. The police can't save you forever. She's my wife. She stopped being your wife the day you raised your hand against her, I said, my voice shaking but firm. He laughed bitterly. You think she's innocent? You think she didn't push me to this? She's been seeing someone else. That's why she left. For a second, the words didn't register. Then I realized what he was doing, deflecting guilt, twisting the story. Get out, I said, my voice low. Before I forget, I was ever taught to be polite. He stepped closer, trying to push the door open. But before he could, Zara appeared behind me. Rafiq, stop. He froze when he saw her. Please, she said, voice trembling. Just go. I don't want to hate you any more than I already do. He looked at her, something breaking in his expression, maybe pride, maybe delusion. "You'll regret this," he spat, and stormed off. I locked the door and turned to her. She was shaking uncontrollably. "Mom," she whispered, "he's losing control." I pulled her into my arms. "Then we'll be ready." The next day, we filed another report. This time, the police took it seriously. They picked him up for questioning. He was charged with assault, harassment, and violation of a restraining order, Nazreen called that night. "He's in custody for now," she said. "But there'll be a hearing soon." When I told Zara, she didn't react right away. She just sat quietly, eyes closed, breathing slowly. Then she said, "I never wanted this, Ammy. I just wanted to be safe." I cupped her face. "Safety isn't something we ask for, my child. It's something we take back when it's stolen." She nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. Weeks later, the hearing began. I went with her. Holding her hand the entire time. Rafik avoided looking at us, but when Zara took the stand, his mask cracked. Her voice was steady as she told the court what he'd done: the hitting, the humiliation, the nights she'd slept locked in the bathroom, the day he'd thrown her out. People whispered, reporters scribbled, cameras flashed, but my daughter didn't flinch. I sat there, proud and aching all at once. When it was over, she walked out of the courtroom into the sunlight. Her hands trembled, but her back was straight. "I feel free," she said quietly, and for the first time in months, I believed her completely. That night, after dinner, she came to my room and sat at the edge of my bed. "Mom," she said softly, "do you think people can really change?" I looked at her, thinking carefully. "Maybe," I said. "But not all want to. Some just change shape to keep hurting others. The real change," I added, "is what you've done, choosing yourself over pain." She smiled faintly. "Then maybe I've changed too." I took her hand and squeezed it. "No, Zara. You didn't change. You just came back to yourself." That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake listening to the quiet hum of the ceiling fan, the gentle breathing from her room. And I thanked God, not for the end of the pain, but for the strength to survive it, because that's what life really is, isn't it? Not the absence of suffering, but the endurance to walk through it and still choose love, love for yourself, for those who protect you. For the mornings that come after every night. The court case stretched over months. Each hearing peeled back another layer of truth, things Zara hadn't told me before. The mistress wasn't just anyone. She was a woman from Rafik's office, someone he'd been seeing for over a year before the marriage. He had promised her everything Zara had: a home, comfort, a future. And when the two worlds collided, he chose to protect his lie with violence. It made me sick to think that the bruises on my daughter's body were born from another woman's jealousy and a man's cowardice. But sitting in that courtroom, I also saw something powerful: justice in motion. Zara's words didn't just break Rafik's mask. They shattered his arrogance. Each time she spoke, his face twitched with discomfort, as if realizing, too late, that he'd underestimated the woman he once controlled. When the verdict came, it was on a bright afternoon in April. I remember the smell of jasmine from the trees outside the courthouse, the way the sunlight flickered through the windows, and the heavy silence before the judge spoke. "Mr. Rafik Ahmed," the judge said, "you are hereby sentenced to 2 years imprisonment for domestic assault and harassment. Additionally, you are ordered to pay restitution for medical and emotional damages." For a moment, everything went quiet inside me. Zara exhaled shakily, her fingers gripping mine so tight they hurt. I turned to look at her. Her eyes were wet, but not with sadness. It was something else. Relief. Rafik looked stunned. Not angry, just hollow, like a man finally facing the consequences of a life built on lies. When the guards led him away, Zara didn't look back. She just whispered, "It's over." Outside, reporters gathered. Some called her a hero. Others wanted interviews, quotes, statements, but Zara simply said, "I'm not brave. I just got tired of being afraid." That line spread everywhere. People started messaging her, women who had lived through similar things, mothers who'd kept silent for years. Our phone wouldn't stop ringing for days. And each story that came in made me realize something profound: that pain can be contagious, yes, but so can courage. A month later, Zara started volunteering with a women's rights organization. She worked evenings at a small support group, helping women file legal cases, guiding them through fear. The first time I saw her speak at one of their meetings, I cried quietly in the back row. She stood tall, confident, her voice steady. "I'm not telling you to fight like me," she said to the women gathered there. "I'm telling you to fight like you. In your own time, in your own way. Just don't stop believing that you deserve peace." There was a time when I thought her scars would define her. But now, I saw how they became her armor. Our lives changed slowly, but steadily. The small house that once echoed with silence began to fill with laughter again. She started painting again, something she'd loved as a teenager. Bright colors. Sunsets. Birds in motion. One afternoon, she handed me a small canvas. "For you, Mom." It was a painting of two women, one older, one younger, sitting side by side on a porch, with dawn breaking behind them. "I wanted to paint us," she said softly. "Because we survived the night." I had no words. Only tears, but fate, it seems, doesn't forget easily. One morning, we received a letter from Rafiq. It was written from prison. He apologized, over and over, in long, desperate sentences. Said he'd lost everything, that the other woman had abandoned him, that he'd been haunted by Zara's silence in court. He said he didn't expect forgiveness, but wanted her to know he'd changed. Zara read it quietly. Then she folded it back into the envelope and set it on the table. "Will you reply?" I asked carefully. She shook her head. "No. Forgiving him doesn't mean talking to him. I forgive him because I don't want him to own another minute of my life." I stared at her, proud, amazed, humbled. She wasn't the same girl who had collapsed at my door that night. She was a woman now. One who had walked through her own fire and come out tempered, not broken. Months later, when Rafiq's sentence ended, we heard he'd left town. No contact, no messages. Just silence. Zara didn't react. She simply continued with her work, her life. Every evening, she came home tired but peaceful. Sometimes she'd sit beside me in the courtyard, sipping tea as the sky turned orange. Once, she said quietly, "Mom, do you think I'll ever love again?" I took a long breath. "Yes," I said finally. "Because love isn't what he gave you. It's what you still carry inside, and that part of you was never his to break." She smiled, and for the first time in a long time, I saw hope in her eyes again. That winter, she got an offer to move to Islamabad, a teaching position at a reputable school. At first, I hesitated. The idea of her being far away frightened me. But she was ready. "I could see it, Mom," she said one evening. "I'll still call you every night. But I need to stand on my own feet again." I nodded slowly. "Then go. Build your life, my child. Don't let fear be your shadow anymore." When she left, I stood at the gate waving until her taxi disappeared around the corner. The street looked emptier, but my heart was full, because this time, she wasn't running from something, she was walking towards something. And that made all the difference. Every night, I still light a small lamp in our courtyard. It's become a ritual now, not for superstition, but remembrance, for all the mothers who've waited by doors at 1 a.m., praying their daughters would come home alive. For all the women who were told to stay silent, and for all the daughters who chose to speak anyway, because when Zara stood in that courtroom, trembling but unbroken, she didn't just fight for herself. She fought for every woman who thought her pain was invisible. When she calls me now, her voice is lighter. She talks about her students, about city noise, about how the jasmine trees near her new home remind her of ours. Sometimes, when she laughs, I close my eyes and listen. It sounds like morning birds. Like freedom. There are nights I still wake up to the sound of that knock. 3 soft taps, the sound that changed everything. But when I open my eyes now, the house isn't filled with fear anymore. It's filled with peace. And in that peace, I've learned something I wish I'd known long ago, that love doesn't mean silence, and patience doesn't mean surrender. My daughter taught me that. When she fell that night, bleeding and broken, I thought her story had ended. But it was only beginning, a story of reclaiming herself, of remembering her worth. She rose, not because the world gave her strength, but because she found it buried beneath her pain. And I learned, as her mother, that sometimes the hardest part of love is watching someone you raised walk through their own fire, knowing you can't carry them, only stand beside them until they find their way out. Now, when I see her laugh, when I hear her voice steady and sure, I realize, the scars we fear will define us often become the proof that we survived. If you've ever sat up at night worrying about someone you love, if you've ever watched them crumble and wondered how to make them whole again, I hope our story reminds you that healing doesn't happen overnight. It happens in small breaths, in quiet mornings, in the courage to keep choosing life after pain. Because sometimes, justice isn't just in the courtroom, it's in waking up, smiling again, and refusing to let what hurt you decide who you'll become. So tonight, as I blow out the lamp and whisper a prayer for every mother, every daughter, every woman who has been told to stay quiet, I ask you this: if someone you love came knocking at your door at 1 a.m., asking for safety, would you have the strength to open it, no matter what the world says? Tell me in the comments, because stories like ours only find meaning when they help someone else find theirs.